Okay, this is just going to be a quick video demonstrating some of the LMTs that are part of the ASUS tool set. This image is a Canon DSLR raw file, Cinema DNG. It's been converted to. As you see with color space X09 sRGB. Now, I'm working in ASUS. It tends to squash it a little bit, which can make it difficult to grade. Now, can you try and use these tools here in terms of raising the exposure, contrast. That's kind of funny. It's more like a lift. I think sharpness doesn't work. Mid-20 does. The other tools work. The problem is that getting it into a shape straight off basically removes the opportunity to use these tools for something else. So I found that it's better to actually try and recreate an inverse ODT, inverse RT for the image, but without the color rendering, to get into a better kind of grading space. And that's what the LMT DNG proposes to do. The image boost basically is a series of transforms, but the main part here is these are actual functions from the inverse ODT and inverse RT. Now, inverse ODTs obviously have particular, what is the final transform, but here, because it's already in ASUS, there's no need for whether it's a BT 1886 or sRGB or whatever, so it's kind of universal. Anyway, so between 1 and 0 is scaling, blending between the original and that function, and then 2 is actually scaling the function. So you can, as you can see, you can raise it up. Now it basically prepares it for grading, and you see it's kind of low, can be low contrast and low saturation, but it's maybe kind of what you need, particularly if you want to work with the other LMTs, whether it's the print film emulation and so on. So also the option is for soft clip, in case not necessarily, it's not really an issue here, but in other high dynamic range images you can you have problems with highlights. And there's a blow chroma option, which is good to do at the beginning of the workflow. And here, because we have the image's original aspect ratio, which is 3:2, but we're in a 16:9 time frame, you can switch on blanking, and you can zoom in. You can use lens distortion as well, but this wasn't shot with a particularly wide angle. So we'll just, for sake of it, use zoom in, and then we'll do a little bit, actually tilt, so we can get the little bit of that ball in shot. Okay. There's also the blue fix, which is that kind of blue neon fix, which is a matrix which is applied in ASUS linear AP0, and that's an option if needed. It should only be used when needed, because it will affect the image regardless whether it's needed or not. So now that the image is somewhat in a better position to be graded, we'll add DCTL, and then we'll choose from. Now all these other ones, the DNG is specific to working with DNGs, but all the other ones can be used in ASUS and whatever other images you're using. It's just here I'm demonstrating working with a DNG. LMT grade is based on, its controls are based on an OFX plugin called Film Grade, but with it's just working on the tone. It doesn't have individual RGB options. It kind of simplified it. We still have the overlay. Let me go back here and turn off the blanking because it was causing issues. So exposure is kind of offset because these are being applied in ACCT. So the initial controls are applied while it's still in log. So there are, yeah, log controls. And you can see the visual representation of what's been happening to the curve. And you can control the pivots and your visual representation. And really, yeah, you just because it's kind of flat, you can apply an S curve to it. Switch that off. And as is the case with the PFE LMTs, you can add grain and control the intensity and the amount and the resolution of the grain. There are other controls here specific to this LMT, which allows you to control the tone, as in the brightness and the saturation of skin, foliage, and sky, because they are pretty common features. Not much foliage, if any, or sky in this image, but we do have skin. And demonstrate, so you can darken, which also increases saturation, and you can adjust saturation, and the range expands it or contracts the actual hue range for what it will affect. And there's subtle changes, but it's the intention. If we go to the next image, and the image boost together into spot. There's no need for distortion, only for soft clip. Okay, because this will be maybe a better example to demonstrate. It's already kind of good to go. You can erase the shadows up a little bit. And here, because the skin tone and the tree behind it are pretty much in the same range, so it'll affect everything. Even if I reduce the range, you'll see now these artifacts will appear then when you're doing that, which is why these controls sometimes maybe are more with working on still images in mind rather than actual video. There is some foliage in here, and obviously because that green gets affected too, and no sky, but there is blue. See, that gets affected. Kind of quick and easy controls. See the same overlay. Now, this might be not a bad image to test the other controls. So, color balance. I think this is from control in Photoshop, and we have basically low, mid, high, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And this involves a conversion from ACCT to Rec 709 and then back again. So, which is kind of the same kind of color space as Photoshop. We can actually, there's a knock graph option here. So you can see what's going on with basically, basically the cyan red. You reduce red, by de facto increase the cyan, and otherwise. then in the mids and the highs. There's an option for an alpha channel here. Now this is the alpha channel as is. It's you see in the line here. That's because this is after it's going through the RT and ODT, which kind of rolls off one peak white to wherever it is here. But it's the actual alpha channel that's been applied. On the image is this would be a proper one. So for the Luma limiter, it is, if you increase here, it basically creates an alpha channel which knocks out the shadows into the mids, leaving just the high points. And then to the minus values, inverts it so that your alpha channel, that whatever adjustments you're applying will only affect the dark parts of the image. And there's also a saturation, which is the same. You're knocking out low saturation. Here you're knocking out high saturation, and you can combine both. You could basically create here like a luminosity mask and then combine it with your saturation to affect there's also an option here called Preserve Luma, which maybe if I do something more extreme. And yeah, it basically finds the Luma value prior to any adjustments, and then after the adjustments it makes sure that it returns the same Luma value even though the color has been changed, like preserve luminosity in resolve. Yeah, for people who like this in Photoshop. There is a hue versus Luma, which is it's a Rec 709 control, and it's kind of similar to the controls in Resolve. Can be quite aggressive. This particular one. Now it says bell curve because there are two different ways of kind of affecting the range of the color. Bell curve is as it is bell curve, whereas without it, it would be a linear. You can demonstrate this. There's actually a hue chart where you can actually demonstrate the effect. See here with the reds, you're brightening and lowering it. If I take something in, see the blue. See darkening the blue, and it's a bell curve. You see the top, you turn it off, and it's more of a linear response. The bell curve is smoother. So it just gives you an idea what you would actually be doing. And the last one is HSL. Now, it's tiled HSL and it is hue, saturation, and Luma. It's based on the similar control in Adobe Camera Raw. But it's not in Rec 709, it's actually in YCH, because that's the space that's used in space is used in the PFEOFX and the PFEOFX neutral. So here, so it's YCH, and then because I use that same principle, same system that's used in the other ones, but so it actually has a much more, I find a more subtle effect. We actually have a hue chart we can actually demonstrate. It's much. This is where you can actually adjust the hue. You can rotate the hue towards magenta, towards orange and yellow. Saturation, maybe not. This chart is pretty saturated anyway, but you can show the desaturation and then the Luma. And so you have it for the 6 main colors. In case we say we get the blue. Now there's a kind of the thing about this is there's a fixed range, but it's I tested up against the camera raw controls, and it's a similar range. You get the same effects. So yeah, for those that want to kind of recreate their normal photo editing workflow, but to do it in Resolve and to do it in Aces, you can use these tools. The main one would be the DNG, LMT DNG, and you can use the other controls. Obviously, the issue with Aces is you're using the keyer and other controls can be problematic because of Resolve's controls aren't color space aware, in the sense that when you're working in Aces and trying to use these controls, it doesn't adapt itself to the Aces CCT, which is why the LMTs are adapted. They're specific, which is why they can be handy, and I use them on my holiday snaps. So like I said, you've seen there's a video for the PFE and the PFE neutral. And lastly, one final suggestion regarding sharpening. Because the sharpening doesn't work, mid-tone detail does. It can be quite intensive. And it's also done at the beginning, whereas you want to sharpen at the end. So what I find works quite well is a frequency separation plugin. Now you can't do certain convolution blurs with the regular DCTL because it can't run independent global functions. Basically, you can't do like Gaussian blurs and so on properly. Whereas with plugins you can, based on their architecture, specifically CUDA. But you can do it to a limited degree OpenCL as well. So what I found is that here in the plugin, you can have a choice of RGB, YAV, LAB. I pick LAB because I just want to sharpen the Luma. And click on display frequency. Same thing. This would be 0.5. Going through the RT ODT is neutral up here, but it's 0.5. So this is neutral. So if I create the threshold for the Luma, and because the image is already flat, because it's Aces CCT, which isn't necessarily a blur, but it means that the high frequency contrast is even that much more specific. So you can see here, it's a fine detail, shall we say, which is kind of what you want with with sharpening with an image. So if I take that away and then start applying the sharpening, you can blur Luma and you can blur the AB, but I just want to sharpen the Luma with this one. And on and off. And I think it works quite well within the kind of Aces pipeline. So you can dial it off or alter the threshold, but as a kind of a final operation for the image, it works quite well. So there you go, bonus tip. It's obviously not part of the LMT package, but it is a free to download and use OFX plugin, part of the greater collection, Bald Avenger, plugins, shaders, etc. Okay, and that's that.